People left everything for California's golden promise in 1849. That was 1849, the year of the California Gold Rush. Today we're going to uncover why this rush happened, what it looked like, and how it influenced our financial system today. The gold rush began with a small newspaper article announcing the discovery of gold. On January 24, 1848, James W. Marshall found gold while building a sawmill for John Sutter near Coloma, California. This single report triggered an influx of people from all walks of life, each hoping to strike it rich quickly. Let's talk numbers. About 300,000 people rushed to California between 1848 and 1855. Imagine that many people today suddenly moving to one place. It would be like a city the size of San Francisco appearing overnight. And what they were after was real gold. So how did this rush start? It all began with a newspaper article on January 24, 1848, when the San Francisco Bulletin reported that there was plenty of gold in California. This announcement ignited widespread excitement, prompting people to rush from as far away as Europe and South America, dreaming of striking it rich. But here's a myth: people thought they could just walk into the hills and start finding gold instantly. It didn't work that way at all. Most miners struggled to find significant amounts of gold for weeks or even months. They had to pan in streams, literally sifting through sand and rocks with metal pans, hoping to spot tiny flecks of gold. Imagine panning a stream every day, hour after hour, without finding much gold. That's the daily grind many prospectors faced during the gold rush of 1849. It was tough work that wore out bodies and minds. Yet people kept coming because they believed striking it rich was worth the hardship. Now here's where things get interesting. How did all this raw material turn into real money? The first challenge was that gold wasn't worth anything unless it could be measured and verified for purity. This led to the creation of paper certificates, pieces of paper representing a specific amount of gold stored in secure locations. Think about it. Imagine if you found a gold nugget but couldn't use it because there were no scales or trusted banks around. You'd have to carry your gold everywhere, which is dangerous and impractical. The solution came with the establishment of banks that started issuing paper money backed by real gold stored in vaults, marking the beginning of banknotes as we know them today. The impact of these certificates was significant. They allowed people to trade easily without carrying heavy gold all the time. Imagine if you found a big nugget but couldn't sell it because everyone else had piles of gold too. These papers made transactions easier and more efficient, helping miners focus on finding more gold rather than worrying about how to use or transport what they had already. Another myth: people thought you could just walk into California with no skills and become rich overnight. That's not true at all. To be successful, miners often needed tools like picks and shovels, which required an initial investment. Plus, many relied on the expertise of others, blacksmiths to repair equipment, merchants for supplies to sustain their operations. Now let's look at the numbers. A troy ounce of gold could fetch about $20 in 1849. That might not sound like much today, but it was enough back then to change lives. But remember, finding that ounce wasn't easy. It took effort and often required money up front to get started. And here's where things really got complicated. As more gold came out of the ground, its increased supply led to price fluctuations rather than a consistent drop in value. Imagine if suddenly everyone had a lot of dollars. Each dollar might become worth less because they're easier to come by. The same economic principle applied to gold back then, with its market value being influenced by shifts in supply and demand dynamics. Now let's talk about how this rush changed banking and finance. Before 1849, paper money wasn't widely used in the U.S., especially not as a standardized currency issued by federal banks or as deposits in private banks. But as miners started using certificates to represent gold they found or held, banks had to adapt. They needed systems for tracking who owned what gold securely and efficiently, storing it safely, and issuing paper money or banknotes backed by gold reserves when demand increased. The rush also made people question the value of gold itself. With so much coming out of the ground, was it still worth its weight in? Well, anything. The answer is yes, but only if there's a system to manage all that wealth. This led to the development of more structured financial systems and institutions, though not directly to the creation of the US dollar as we know it today. The modern form of the US dollar evolved over time through various monetary reforms and policies. Now here's a key moment. As more gold started flooding into California, banks had to determine how much actual gold each piece of paper represented. They did this by setting a ratio. For every $10 in notes issued, they typically kept about 25% or $2.50 worth of gold in reserve, which is called the specie reserve. This system was crucial because it ensured that people could always exchange their paper money for real gold if needed. But here's where things got tricky. As banks issued more paper currency backed by less actual gold, there was a risk that people would lose confidence in these banknotes. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. This rush wasn't just about finding gold. It was about creating a financial system that could handle rapid economic growth and large amounts of wealth. Think of it like building a new city. You need to lay down infrastructure first or nothing works smoothly. One of the most surprising facts is how few people actually struck it rich. Studies suggest that only about 10% of miners found significant gold deposits. The rest either returned home without striking gold or remained in California and turned to other ventures such as running supply stores for fellow prospectors. And here's a twist you might not know. As the easily accessible gold deposits ran out, more sophisticated techniques were needed to extract it from harder-to-reach locations. This shift required significant capital investments and led to large mining companies taking over operations, marking the end of the era dominated by individual prospectors. Now let's talk about how this rush changed our concept of money itself. Before the gold rush of 1849, many people still trusted only gold coins and specie. But as banks started issuing more paper certificates backed by these reserves, it forced a shift in thinking. Paper could be just as valuable if the system backing it was solid and reliable. This is where the real value of trust came into play. The success of these banknotes depended on everyone believing that they could always be exchanged for gold when needed. It's like having faith that your credit card will work everywhere, but with gold instead of plastic. Another fascinating detail is how this rush affected banking laws. Before the gold rush of 1849, there weren't many regulations around issuing paper money. But as the amount of certificates increased, states began implementing rules to prevent banks from printing excessive amounts without sufficient actual gold reserves backing them up. Now let's look at some concrete examples. Imagine a miner named John who found a small nugget and traded it for $20 worth of bank notes. He then went back home with those certificates, which he could use to buy goods or services just like real money. This is how the California gold rush made paper currency more widely accepted and valuable in areas far from gold mines. And here's where things get even more interesting. Some banks got creative by issuing their own private banknotes, which were not backed by a single state, but rather recognized across regions due to people's trust in them. This led to a diverse range of paper currencies circulating, each with its own value based on the stability and reputation of the issuing institution. Now let's fast forward to today. We live in a world where most transactions happen without ever touching physical gold or even paper money. The same principles that emerged from the 1849 California gold rush are still at play: trust, regulation, and systems for managing wealth. One of the biggest lessons from the gold rush of 1849 is how financial innovation arises out of necessity. As miners needed better ways to trade their gold, banks and merchants developed new solutions. This interplay between emerging needs and creative responses helped shape our modern banking system. So back to that initial hook. When we talk about why 300,000 people rushed California in search of gold, it's not just a story of individual dreams or greed. It's also a tale of how the modern financial system began to take shape. The gold rush highlighted the value of trust and the importance of having systems capable of managing large amounts of wealth effectively. Subject: the gold rush of 1849. From panning to paper money. In short, the gold rush wasn't just about finding gold. It was also about developing new ways to manage money that allowed everyone from miners to merchants to thrive in an emerging economy. And those lessons are still relevant today as we navigate our complex financial world. This is educational and historical, not financial advice. The gold rush highlighted the limitations of early financial systems. Imagine miners returning with bags full of gold dust, lacking coins or paper money for transactions. How could they buy a loaf of bread? Often barter or informal IOUs were used, leading to chaos and fraud. To solve this, banks started issuing gold certificates backed by the actual gold stored in their vaults. These certificates function like early checks or paper money, making transactions smoother and safer. However, it also introduced new risks. If a bank issued too many certificates without sufficient gold reserves to back them up, people would lose trust, potentially leading to runs on the bank where customers demand physical gold, depleting the institution's reserves quickly. Another innovation was the issuance of mining stocks. People purchased shares in hopes of profiting from future gold discoveries, thereby spreading risk among investors. This early form of venture capitalism helped fund more efficient mining operations and technologies. These developments weren't just about convenience, they were crucial for economic stability. Without a robust financial system, the influx of gold from the 1849 California gold rush could have led to significant price volatility and hoarding. Instead, banks transformed raw metal into circulating currency, which fostered trade and investment across America. So while the gold rush began with individual dreams of striking it rich, it ended up teaching us the importance of establishing stable financial systems on a larger scale. And just as those miners needed stable systems then, we need them today to navigate our complex financial landscape. This is educational and historical, not financial advice.